In this first lecture on external dynamics, we're going to focus on the idea of external learning and what that means, and how the concept of X teams can help us think about teams that can be better at external learning activities. And then we'll have another short video looking at external roles. So when we think about this idea of external learning, we have to think about this idea of over and under bounded teams. So an overbounded team is a team that really is internally focused. People have a very high sense of loyalty and attention focus on the inside of the team. They may be very effective at those internal dynamics. They may have high quality, high density communication. They may have effective decision-making processes. They may be good at conflict resolution. But a team that is overbounded means that they are highly insulated from the outside world of the team. If it's too exclusive, the team might really become isolated and out of touch. So if we think about who are our stakeholders, who are our customers, who are the suppliers that we need other work product from, whether that's information, whether that's materials, whether that's people coming into the team to support our efforts, an overbounded team will not have access to enough of that kind of resources to be effective. Team boundaries ultimately differentiate one group from another. So if we look at this diagram here, we have the team in the middle here, and this would be its boundary, right? This is where the members are inside and know they're part of this team, and they're distinct and differentiated from these other structures out here, which might be teams or might be units or work divisions or other places. And if we think about, one of these might be outbound to a customer. If the team has a very, very heavy boundary and does not reach out and understand what customers are looking for, what features are important to customers, the likelihood that that team is going to generate a product that's successful is very, very low. So teams that are overbounded overemphasize internal dynamics and overemphasize internal focus. And what my friend Deborah Ancona says in her research, she's one of the first people doing research to really study these kinds of external learning activities. Too much focus can be fatal, right? So the team can just have an extinction moment itself if it's not recognizing what it needs to adapt to in its external environment. So the key takeaway there is this idea of external learning is vital for performance. Teams have to be able to look outside and understand the needs of stakeholders, lobby stakeholders for resources, etc. And teams can engage in internal learning behaviors by doing trial and error, by failing and learning from failure, by raising concerns, those learning behaviors we talked about as internal. But it can also often be extremely efficient and effective if teams can look to other teams that are doing similar work. And if somebody else has innovated, to just copy that innovation. It can be a much faster way to move up the learning curve and perform better if we engage in that kind of external learning, looking outside, looking for models, looking for places where we can do something or learn something from somebody else's experiences. So we have research that tells us that teams that engage in external learning outperform those that don't do this. So we have evidence that overbounding is negative. And here's one study that my friend and co-author Henrik Bresman has conducted, looking at pharmaceutical teams that are engaged in innovation in pharmaceutical development. And he considered two different kinds of learning: vicarious learning, which means learning from the experiences of others. So that means, if there's other teams doing similar kinds of projects that we're doing, if we can have ties and connections with those teams and learn things that they've done that we can copy and use ourselves, that's what vicarious learning is. Context learning is going out and understanding what is it that our key stakeholders are caring about? What's going on in the environment, in terms of the industry environment or business environment, and understanding enough about that we can adapt and change what we're doing, what we're working on. We can prioritize different projects. We can prioritize different product features to adapt to what that context is viewing as important. And in this research study, basic results are that vicarious learning activities were more important for team performance than internal. So in this case, engaging in external learning actually was more important than some of those internal behaviors. Now, I'd caution you to say that's not always true, and it may be more true in highly uncertain, ambiguous, and dynamic environments like pharmaceutical development. In most teams, we need some kind of balance of both of these, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. At the same time, if teams engaged in that external learning but did not have internal learning processes, they weren't as effective. So one way or the other, if we are looking outside for new ideas and innovative processes, if we don't have some kind of good internal dynamics, we will not benefit from that external learning effort. Context also was important, but was not as affected by internal learning dynamics. It suggests that maybe learning things about benchmarking or industry data could be brought into the team and applied a little bit more effectively without needing to engage in this internal dynamics. But ultimately, both kinds of external learning activities boosted performance in these teams. So the core takeaway from this lecture is that we have to caution ourselves not to have teams be overbounded. And that does link to the internal dynamics we talked about. I think specifically groupthink is one of the big ones. Teams that are overbounded often have some evidence of groupthink and some risk of that kind of insular thinking. So teams do need to find ways to balance their internal dynamics to maintain effectiveness, but open their boundary enough that they are benefiting from the learning of others and are making sure to understand what stakeholders are looking for and adapt to those needs to be delivering a product or an outcome that's in demand and valued by the external context.